Hey, let's get started. Uh, I'm Mitchell Rose, Associate Professor of Dance Filmmaking in the Department of Dance here at the Ohio State University. And I appreciate you people showing up from all around the world to hear me profess a little bit about dance film today. Let's just start by watching a movie, and then I'll start my yammering. So let's start by watching Dear John. Now, before we do that, here's a couple of international gestures that you should know so we can communicate silently. This is the international gesture for the video is over. Okay, so that's important to know. This is the international gesture for your microphone is muted. Okay, something that will really get my attention there. So I discovered that. Okay, so anyway, let's begin. Take a look at Dear John. There goes everybody. Jared, you were the first to click the link because you finished first. Okay, so let me give you a brief bio about who I am. So I started college in electrical engineering, but in my sophomore year, I needed phys ed credit, and I thought it would be a good way of meeting girls, so I signed up for Choreography 1. I had never seen modern dance before. I didn't know what the word choreography is, but within 2 months, I'm choreographing my first dance, having never seen modern dance. So I threw in yoga, I threw in sports. Everything that was coming out was completely coming from my voice. I didn't know the conventions of the field. I didn't know that in modern dance, you're supposed to come in out of the wings on the bold diagonal, and then at the end, you're supposed to huddle down into a little ball beneath the spotlight. I didn't know any of those things. So everything that I did had to totally come from me. And that artistic sensibility has, I think, pervaded all of the work that I've done, first as a choreographer and later as a filmmaker. It has that aspect of beginner's mind, and I'll be getting to that more in a little while. But that's an important point that I wanted to get it across. So after college, I moved to New York. I started a dance company that specialized in humor. Did pretty well, and for 15 years my company toured and performed in New York. And after 15 years, I felt that was done. I didn't have any more work that I felt compelled to have to do on stage. I had made 75 pieces and I wanted to move on. So doing a lot of soul searching, I decided to go into filmmaking. So I disbanded the company, I moved to Hollywood, went to the American Film Institute as a directing fellow in their conservatory, and for 3 years did that. And then for 10 years after that, I was in Hollywood doing the Hollywood hustle, writing screenplays and having meetings with producers and things like that. Then UCLA had a fellowship called the Dance Media Fellowship. It was a 2-month program for 6 people, ways of exploring dance and trying to capture dance's aliveness in a 2-dimensional medium. I didn't think, hey, this will be a new direction for me. I just thought, yeah, it'll be fun after all this time to go and revisit dance and synthesize these two loves of dance and film. I didn't mean for this to become a life path. Now I'm going to become dance film guy. John Lennon says, life is what happens to us while we're busy making other plans. So I then got commissions from dance companies to begin making films with them. And then I got a gig teaching dance film at Cal Arts. And then I did that for 4 years. And then I got this gig here at Ohio State teaching dance filmmaking here, and I've been here for 9 years. So let's watch another film. So we're going to take a look at Advance now, and let me know when you're done with Advance, and go. All right, I'm going to give a talk now on my particular orientation to dance film. And I think that my particular background of having been in dance but then having a film career gives me a unique position in the dance film field where a lot of the work that's being done is done by dance artists who then decide to make a film but approach it with dance thinking. So I'm going to do a PowerPoint now, and excuse my focus disconnect, but I have to look at the script, which is over here. Many of us here are dancers, and so we love dance. In fact, for many of us, it might occupy most of what we think about. And so, being dance-centric, it can be easy to jump to the conclusion that dance film is dance that's on film. But while it does convey an experience of dance, dance film is film. In fact, I've had an article published in which I arrogantly insist upon calling it dance film because it's film, as opposed to screen dance or dance for camera or similar terms which seem to be somehow trying to make it into a form of dance. It's a form of film, and it requires film thinking. Because of our possible predilections for seeing dance film as a form of dance, I think it's important to step back from our patterns of thought and take a fresh look at things. So, let me ask you, what is dance, meaning the performing art form? So if you have a feeling about what dance is, that thing that you spend so much time doing, then unmute yourself and tell the world.
Dance is a way of expressing yourself through motion.
So is sign language a form of dance? Or is mime dance? Okay, let's step back even further. Let me ask you, what is art? Anybody like art out there?
Well, I was going to say about dance that it's ephemeral. And what I
It
would
is.
say about art, and this would cover dance too, is that there's intention behind it.
I like that. Let me ask everybody to take a look at a French translation, a translation of the French poem Dans les rues by Simone Corday. It's a simple four-word poem. So take a look at this for a few moments, and then I'm going to ask you to give me an interpretation of what it means to you. So take a look at this and tell me what you got. Okay, well, who'd like to venture an interpretation of this poem?
I make the poem in my mind through
Yeah.
characters, a setting, and an action.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else?
I'm visualizing lived experience as a person who has parents that have this sort of shared experience being immigrants and going through sort of this bridge across the world.
Okay, well, here's the deal. There is no Simone Corday. This isn't a poem. This is four words that I just took out of newspaper headlines. But look what happened to you when you tried to figure out this poem. You sat with these four words and went on a little journey. You looked inside and tried to figure out there's meaning here. What is the meaning? You turned up the level of sensitivity, of awareness to 11. And humans are riddle solvers, so you knew that there was meaning here and you tried to find the meaning for yourself. Our best selves want to understand. And when we go inside on a journey of art, we evoke those best selves. Hey, I've been working on a visual arts piece for 6 months, and I think I've really got it. It means a lot to me, and I'd like to share it with you now. So, see? How do you like it? See how there's all this emptiness over here, and there's a big green field. Green means growth. It could also mean represent money. So are we saying that our society is consumerist? Do we have a dependency on power? Is this a light switch or is it some other kind of switch? There's meaning here. I want to figure out what this meaning is. I'm glad I could share that with you. In art, we put a frame around a piece of life that identifies the thing inside as hyperlife. This frame, whether a proscenium arch or a rectangle of projected image, demands of the spectator, the contents of this are special. Turn it up. Look within yourself and identify the specialness. The key element that differentiates art from some stuff on the wall is intentionality. And that's what you said that before. A person declaring, I made this special thing to be considered in a special way. Flip. Sometimes our view of the dance art form gets stiff from how much work we do on stage. Someone says, I went and saw that new dance of that choreographer, and we dance-centrics have this vision. There they are, all those dancers in that rectangular volume. I can see all of them way over there. They're facing me and moving in sideways planes. I remain sitting here, so they stay the same size. Sometimes they come and go from that rectangular volume, and the light goes up and down, and the time advances smoothly and unbroken, and after some minutes, the lights go down and stay down. That's our reflexive dance thinking. We envision whole bodies that stay the same size. They move horizontally, sometimes disappearing off the sides. They stay in the same space, with time progressing linearly for the duration of the piece. And that thinking will not serve your filmmaking, because dance film is film, a different way to think. In film, the performers don't have to present themselves facing us. They don't have to stay the same size, and we don't have to see all of their bodies. They can be a football field away or a foot away. We're granted incredible intimate access to get right up to a person and look inside their eyes, those windows of the soul. They don't have to stay in the same space. They don't even need to stay in the same time. That's incredible artistic freedom. So, to step into this different world, I think it's important that we loosen our attachments to long-developed thinking patterns and see with first-time eyes. You know, when you have a friend who comes to visit you from out of town, they've never been to your town before, and so you're driving them around, showing them things, and, oh, this is the Capitol building, and you see the Capitol building for the first time. You're seeing it from behind their eyes, putting yourself in a state of empathy with them. So it's this concept of seeing things for the first time. There's the Zen concept of beginner's mind, to be open to all possibilities. And a Zen quote goes, in the mind of the beginner, there are many possibilities. In the mind of the expert, there are few. And I'll make that connection back to my bio of the way I began dancing without knowing the conventions, and I was an absolute beginner. And I've tried to have that artistic sensibility pervade all of my work as a dancer and now as a filmmaker. Likewise, I think it's good to have an open view of dance film's possibilities, because it can be so many things. It's good to go back to the beginning, to a place before we began to become experts and our thinking began to become set. To have a fresh look at what dance is and what art is. Flip. But just to be clear about what dance film is not, from my perspective. Simply shooting a stage dance. I don't call documentation dance film. You can turn a stage dance into a dance film, but it has to be adapted the way a novel is adapted into a screenplay when it's translated from one medium to another. Dance has long had a presence in cinema, but Busby Berkeley or Fred Astaire is also not the sense of dance film that we're talking about here. Those are examples of dancing that is filmed beautifully. My perspective of dance film is not merely recording some dance. The film is the dance. Images choreographed from the ground up. So, to what dance film is? This is my definition of the field. It's a visual medium that has as its content dance art that is solely meant for that medium, or has the intentionality to evoke an experience of dance. The first originates with dancing, the second does not necessarily. It could be a randomly swirling piece of fabric, but the results of both are an experience of dance in the spectator. By experience of dance, I mean that while watching a dance film, one has an experience that feels like the experience one has while watching dance. This definition means there doesn't even necessarily have to be a human involved. Let me show you some video clips, and I want you to decide if these are dance films. See if they give you the feeling that you're watching dance, if they make you think about dance. So first, let's take a look at this. So, dance film? Yeah. Why would it be? There's no intentionality to it. It's my cat Marcel walking on a treadmill. Okay, how about this? Hop, hop, look. Birds go hop, hop, hop. Just like dancers go hop, hop, hop. Dance film? No, again, there's no intentionality to it. Okay, let's take a look at this. Here's some more bird footage. How about this? Dance film? I see nodding. Hell yeah! And not just because it's longer or because there's music or some of the movements resemble human movements. This is an excerpt from Birds by British dance filmmaker David Hinton, and it conveys an undeniable experience of dance. When watching it, I feel like I do when I watch a dance. The same neurons are firing. But here, the editing's the choreography, and it can only exist on film. In dance film, those same elements that make dance dance, motion, musicality, space, design, are melded with film language into a cinematic reimagining of the dance dynamic. And this reimagining of what dance is why I'm stressing going back to the beginning and reassessing our fundamental imagining about dance. If you come at dance film with your old dance thinking, it's harder to come up with a wonderfully fresh reconceiving of dance, like Birds. Dance now has two paths, theatrical and filmic, real and artificial. Theater conforms to real time and real space. There it is, the thing taking place right there before you, as a whole. A phenomenologically lived experience happening in the same reality as you 50 feet away. But it's beautiful to have that real experience of real humanity sitting there, sharing their lives with you, huffing and puffing up there, right there. Film isn't real life, it's hyperlife. It doesn't have to conform to time and space. It takes different elements of them and creates an artificial construct. And I don't mean the word artificial. Magic is artifice, but it lifts the heart in wonder. Film is utter artifice, and I love spinning that magic. Picasso famously said, "Art is a lie that tells the truth." So here is the dance film spectrum. And I'm arranging this on a diagonal to try to not favor one end. This isn't good-bad, it's different approaches. At one extreme, They went to a location and shot the entirety of a piece of choreography using perhaps various camera angles and interesting cinematography. This is what I call a dance in a place, and its artistic engine is the choreography. And at this extreme is Birds. It's a completely filmic construction using film language. The editing is the choreography. This extreme minimally uses the medium. This extreme is the medium. And then there's all the gradations in between. Of my 35 films, I've made one film in the dance in a place side. Here's an excerpt.
Orally the bird may flee, the willow's golden hair, swing through winter fitfully on the stormy air. Yet if thine eyes I see, gloom will soon depart, for to me, sweet Oralee, is sunshine through the heart.
This woman was a student in our department, and she showed this dance in a showing, and I thought it would be great to film it in the snow. It's a dance filmed in a place. So that's one approach. But my personal interest is on the right half of the spectrum, in using constructions to tell movement stories and filmic dance poems that convey an experience of dance. I'm going to break up the presentation now, and let's take a look at another film, Contact. Okay, sorry. I'm waiting for you people. I could just sit here forever. I figured that, man, that's the longest 3 minutes, 14 seconds ever. Thank you. Let me talk about 3 areas of interest that make dance film vital to the dance field and the world. Longevity, economics, impact. When I first started dancing, I thought one of the really cool things about dance is that it's a lived experience. It's real humans being human, up there playing before us, right there in this gem-like moment. And it exists only in the moment, and that was fantastic when I was young and immortal. Then, as I got a little older and I began to have thoughts of mortality, I began to realize, well, where are my dances? All those dances, they don't exist anymore, because all I have left is this box of dusty, lousy videotapes. Because one of the bad things about dance is that it exists only in the moment. But my films are in the cloud. And as long as, I don't even have to pay my Vimeo bill. The films are already up there, and they'll last forever. Longevity. Speaking generally, it's expensive to put on a show. If you're a dance artist and you have something to say, you can get a bunch of dancers together. You can give them some money for rehearsal. You can hire a performance space and have some posters printed. You pay a graphic designer, and then you print up the posters. You put them around. Now you hire a lighting designer. Maybe you rent some lights. It's really expensive to put on a show. If you're a dance artist and you have something to say, it costs almost nothing to make a dance film. You've got your camera. You probably already have iMovie on your computer. You can make a dance film for almost nothing, put it on the web, and probably have more people see it in a couple of weeks than will have saw all of your performances that you were going to do. Dance film is incredibly democratic. People can do it, and people can get their work seen around the world. There's the question of, why are movies popular? And I'd say it's because film provides a deep mythic need, story. And I think for our purposes, we can loosely define story as a sequence of human events that can be related to by the watcher, something that resembles their lives, hopes, beliefs. This is why dance film has impact. because it triggers a response in the spectator that they've experienced these life things too. We come into the world as babies, totally blank slates. We know nothing, and we have to learn how the way the world works. It's for our safety, we need to know the way things are. So we go crawling around, exploring everything, and oh, look, here's a pebble. What's a pebble? Oh, look, there's a hinge on this cabinet. Oh, it's so smooth and shiny. We know nothing, and we need to fill our experiential databases. And story tells us the way things are. So we crawl into bed and we beg, tell us the way things are. Well, there's a magical kingdom. There once was a magical kingdom, and there. Oh, is that the way it is? Oh, that's good information. Thanks. We are sponges for experience, and that need doesn't leave us as we grow older and we march into the darkened theaters and we sit there and the flickering light hits us and we go into this place of semi-hypnotic receptivity going, whoa, where am I? This probably happens to you all the time, that I need to do a reality check while watching a movie, but I'm just in a movie theater. We forget our sense of time, we forget where we are, we even forget our identity. Oh, that person isn't me up there, my life isn't in danger. That's incredible. That's a real impact. I mean, it's an incredible level of transcendence. I also think there's a physiological effect, that there's something about the flickering of light, that our retinas have this itch that like moving light satisfies. So here, look at this campfire for a moment. You've probably done this. You have gazed into the fire in the fireplace or at a campfire, and you go into the zone. It's a very visual place. You begin getting in touch with memories. So combine the deep mythic need for story that humans have with flickering light, and that's real impact. And if you look at box office numbers for movies versus dance performances, I think you can understand why. Let me show you a scene from a short dance film called Outside In, directed by Margaret Williams, choreographed by Victoria Marks. It's a wonderful film, but I'm just going to show one scene and we'll talk about it on the other side. It's a beautiful film, but let's take a look at the organizing principles that are dance thinking based and film thinking based in this scene alone. First, those that are dance thinking based. It's continuously frontal with proscenium-like orientation. It happens in continuous time in the same space. The choreographic engine originates only from the dancing, not from filmic construction. And there are theatrical effects of stage lighting and fog. And now the film language in this scene. There are cuts, offering us different perspectives. There's repeated action with punch-ins to close-ups to allow for intimacy. But overall, that's it. This scene is a dance filmed beautifully in a place. In fact, an audience could have sat in that warehouse and watched it with largely the same experience. I left dance to become a filmmaker, and I rejoined dance as a filmmaker. In my work, I strive to convey an experience of dance through cinematic grammar. With my films Advance or Contact, the experience of dance on the screen could only happen because it was constructed from the ground up using film language. If you're coming at dance film as a choreographer ready to make a dance, rather than as a filmmaker ready to construct a film, the film frame can start to become a surrogate for the proscenium. There are other possibilities. To find them, dispel yourself of your expert dance thinking. Become a beginner. So let's take a look at the next film now. This is called And So Say All of Us. So you don't have to watch all of the credits at the end. When you see directed by Mitchell Rose, okay, it looks like people are getting to their credits. You don't need to watch their credits. Just suffice it to say, a lot of wonderful people helped make the film. So I'm going to talk about the process of making And So Say All of Us. This film came from 3 areas of interest for me. First is what I call hyper-match cutting, films where every adjacent edit is perfectly aligned in position and continuity. 5 of my 35 films have explored this. First was Advance, the linear dance that you watched. Then came Contact, which you also watched. And I should say that there's nothing new in this. Here's Buster Keaton, aka God, doing it so brilliantly 95 years ago in Sherlock Jr. The second area of exploration that entered the third of the series of 5 films is my long-term interest in remote collaboration. I've always been fascinated by the idea of getting people to do complicated things remotely via instructions. In Globetrot, I wanted to make a film that would portray fractured but continuous choreography and that would be shot by many remote filmmakers. B.B. Miller choreographed a dance, and I broke it down into 2-second segments that I farmed out to 54 filmmakers in 23 countries representing all 7 continents. Each filmmaker would find a non-dancer on the street and work with them until they had learned their 2-second phrase. Here's an excerpt. There's an art game called Exquisite Corpse, in which an artist draws on accordion-folded paper, and then a second artist picks up the drawing from there, and eventually the totality is revealed. There's also a literary form of this. I wanted to make a film version using a corps of dancers, Exquisite Corps. I invited choreographers I knew and others I didn't, and started building it in sequence. A choreographer had to repeat the final movement of the previous person, and from there they could take it wherever they wanted for 2 to 10 seconds. Here's an excerpt. The film did well, having 1.5 million views online, and everybody and his mother is copying it right now. But with Globetrot taking 2 years and Exquisite Core taking another 2 years, I was totally done with these hypermatch cutting projects. And that brings me to the third area of interest that inspired this film, money. Let's face it, the real reason that anyone gets into the dance film game. In the summer of 2017, I got a call from the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Their executive producer of 30 years, Joe Malillo, was retiring, and they were throwing him a huge bash the next year. They had seen Exquisite Core, and they wanted to commission me to make a version for them, featuring BAM alum, choreographers that Joe had felt particularly close to. Even though in Exquisite Core, coordinating all those people and their schedules was painful, BAM would provide producers from Pomegranate Arts to keep the machinery humming along. And with that, and the opportunity to work with some great artists, there was a lot more potential for fun. With Exquisite Core, dozens of people had declined my invitation. But with this BAM film, in many cases, Joe had made these people's careers. So even the big names could hardly say no if they ever wanted to perform at BAM again. But in truth, they all loved Joe and they wanted to do it. In terms of methodology, I had already done a lot of the R&D in Exquisite Core, so it wasn't that hard to get started. I wrote a manual that every dancer and camera operator would get. The dancer's parameters can be boiled down simply. Wear a red top for visual continuity. Repeat the preceding ending movement precisely. Use a visually interesting location. The length is 4 to 12 seconds, really hard for people. And don't do any of the no-nos, which I'll get to in a second. Camera person checklist, and then the fuller dancer descriptions of the above, and the no-nos. Don't direct message Joe holding up an I love Joe sign or something. Don't exit the frame. Don't sing or speak. No one else in the frame. No commercial music playing. I shot 17 of the 52 people, and a former student of mine, who's now a dance filmmaker in New York, shot another 17. And the international dancers provided their own camera person. This was the section for the camera operators. How to position and align the dancer in the frame. How big to have the dancer. I'll get to that later. How to move with the camera to match up to the camera movement of the previous shot. And more tech info to get everybody on the same page, because there were all levels of expertise involved and everything from black magic cameras to iPhones. BAM prepared a list of choreographers, many of whom had been in Exquisite Core, and we began coming up with a sequence. The dancer that began the film would end it to bookend the film, and I wanted to start with a subway train arriving at BAM, so I used David Dorfman, an old friend and someone who's always game. Particularly since after every take, David had to take the train to the next station, cross over, and then come back, taking 15 minutes. And working with the timing of subway trains can be unpredictable. Just ignore those people and cue the doors. Close the doors. Just hold it, David. Keep it real. Cue the doors. Magic, magic, magic. Yeah, just forget it. See you in 15 minutes. And the process began. For each dancer, besides being able to watch the entirety of the edit to that point, I would also send a rehearsal video of the previous person's ending, like this. This would be accompanied by a lengthy email in which I'd suggest ideas for concepts and locations, and I would also describe the movement in words. A dancer can watch a video and think, I got it. But they probably don't have it well enough for these purposes. So by having them use a different part of their brain with language, it makes them look at the movement deeper. Here's what I wrote to Martin Zimmerman for this shot. When you start the roll, you're 90 degrees to the camera. The left arm circles back, the right arm is relaxed to the down-forward diagonal. You're now facing the camera with the focus down. For camera, when he starts his roll, he's in the upper middle section with his head on the left grid line. Tilt straight up, so by the time he stands, his waist is on the upper grid line. You really have to go into that level of detail. And then when I edit the two shots, cut on motion. It makes the edit motivated, kinetic, and most of all transparent. Cutting from stillness to stillness calls attention to the editor making choices. With this shot, the next person, Aurélien Bory, and his camera person did a terrific job of matching seamlessly. Cut on motion. Dancer by dancer, the process ground along. Every so often, I'd fly to New York to blitz through 7 or 8 people in a weekend. It's much easier when I can shoot it myself and coach the dancer and edit it right there on my laptop to make sure it works. Otherwise, typically, I get footage sent in 1 person a week. Here's how I line up the shots. You can see that Bill T. Jones is smaller to the right and low. So put in a cross dissolve between the 2 clips so I can see them both. Then scale up the smaller clip so they're about the same size. Then reposition the scaled up clip until they're overlapping. Then delete the cross dissolve. And they're kind of lined up. Good enough for this demo. Given this technique, I'd ask everyone to shoot 85% of the size of the preceding dancer so I could scale it up and have some latitude to move the image around. Once the editing is done, there's endless post-production magic to improve on reality. Those pillows are ugly and distracting, so put in a wall to cover them. Or little tweaks like Meredith Monk is next to a lovely babbling brook, but you can hardly see it, so superimpose some sparkling over the water. That fuse box in Lucinda Child's kitchen is boring, so do a little interior decorating. And what I said before about always cutting on motion was hard here because she was moving so slowly and the cut was clunky. So I added in the birds a split second before the edit to have an EEG spike of distraction, and it worked much better. The film premiered September 13th, 2018 in BAM's Harvey Theater. Okay, let me stop the presentation of that now, and let's move on to the last film. So I've been sitting here endlessly stating the pro dance film point of view, and it's really unfair that no one is here to give a fair and balanced contrary point of view. So I'd like you to now watch the case against dance film so that we get both sides of the story. So take a look at that now, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, and we are back. So let's do our Q&A now.
Well, thank you so much for doing that.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions. One is that, of course, I show your videos all the time, your dance films, or whatever we call them today, but to my students all the time. And of course, now with this online dance education situation, anything on film is becoming, those resources have become even more important. And of course, there have been a lot of people who are, as you said, using your idea and taking off with it, the idea of the exquisite chord, which I'm just curious, number one, how you feel about that. Like, is it okay with you? Is it cool? Because we were kind of thinking of doing something like that. I think you deserve credit for it, of course, but I also wonder what simple, I guess I want to know if you have a recommendation for what program to use for people like me. I want to say us, but I can't speak for other people.
Okay. All right. So 2 questions there. If you mean like editing software, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
What you have to learn is editing, not software. You could do this on Final Cut, which is I did. You can do it on Premiere. You can do it on DaVinci Resolve. You can do it on Avid. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters really is the art of editing. Software doesn't matter. Software is just a tool. It doesn't like make art for you. I could teach you how to drive, and you could become a good driver. And you could then drive a Toyota or a Ford, and it would be the exact same thing. It would just be like, oh, it's over here. Oh, I didn't think that this doesn't have a stick shift. It doesn't matter. You know how to drive, right? So software doesn't matter. Okay, the other question is, how do I feel about everybody making these films? At first, I was irritated when I saw people doing this, because this is my intellectual property. You can't just begin doing it. The thing is, you can't copyright an idea, so there's nothing I can do about it. So only this morning, actually, or yesterday morning, I began thinking, you know what? I can't control it. I might as well, if you can't beat them, join them. So I think I'm actually going to do a webinar on how to do it. And just ask people to say, inspired by Exquisite Core by Mitchell Rose. I mean, that's probably the best I can do. But people are just going to do it anyway. So my 2 options are to try to get on board or to sit here and grouse about it. I've got enough things to grouse about. So I think I'm probably in the next like week or 2, I'm going to do a webinar on how do you do that. Misty.
Yeah, I popped back in because I had to leave before the Q&A last time. So my question is kind of in reference to something you were talking about there, which I'm sure you talked about here, which was, is it a dance film or not? And you talked about what invokes, the idea of movement in the body. I guess I'm wondering, does it matter who the spectator is, if it's a dance film or not? And how much do you think about who's going to be your viewer or your audience when you're making?
So first, it doesn't matter who the viewer is. I don't care if it's somebody who is familiar with it or not. I mean, I put some thought into that, but not a lot. And I don't want to have that privileged or, the point of view of like, I'm just making mine for the literati or the cinemati. So I don't care. And my view is that I try to make my work accessible. I want everybody to be able to enjoy it. I mean, some pieces are a little bit more cerebral than others, but I want work that everybody can like. And I try to make work which is entertaining, and I don't think that entertainment and art are mutually exclusive. I think a lot of my films have a hook in them that goes beyond dance film. Like, let's take a look at Dear John. So Dear John is a guy dancing with his excavator. A lot of people who aren't dancers can, first of all, just go like, hey, look, there's like this truck and the guy dancing, and that's enough. But the bigger story of Dear John is a story of longing. And longing is an emotional archetype that everyone has experienced. Everyone has experienced, I want this object, the object of your desire. How can I have union with this thing? That's a universal sensation that everybody can relate to, even if you have no dance experience. So that's the bigger story of Dear John, isn't that like, oh, look, he's dancing with a thing. It's like, it's a story of longing that everybody has felt. In fact, my frequent collaborators in with a lot of my films is Body Vox Dance Company, which is in Portland, Oregon. Um, Dear John is with them. Advance is, I don't know what else we saw today, but In Contact was. Yeah, so those were all made with Body Vox. It's two artistic directors, Jamie Hampton and his wife, Ashley Rowland. Ashley had said when I first became a filmmaker, hey, we should do a solo on a John Deere excavator, you know, like To the Dying Swan. We should see, you know, have it, you know, look at all the different things it can do. And I thought, okay, that's fine, that'll be great. So now it was time to actually, when I was doing that UCLA fellowship, to actually make the thing. And I felt I could do a thing of, look, the machine can do this and the machine can do this and there's graceful music playing and isn't it nice? That's can be interesting for about 45 seconds. Look what it can do. But if I said it's dancing with another person and there's the story of longing, that's a big story. And you can then get people to be interested for 3 minutes, you know, by having it become the story of a person and the object of his longing.
Thank you.
Sure. Did I convince you with the case against dance film to then hate dance film? No? Okay, fine. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. It was fun talking with you, and see you on the internet somehow. So long.